Hello and welcome to Talking Law, the podcast where you can hear barristers, judges, solicitors, managing partners and more talk about their careers and lives in law. I'm Sally Penni, MBE. I'm a barrister at Kenworthy's Chambers in Manchester and the Joint Vice Chair of the Association of Women Barristers, and I am the founder of Women in the Law UK. This episode is supported by Brabners. Brabners is a leading independent law firm which helps private, public and third sector organisations and private individuals achieve their goals. You can find out more about their work on their website at www.brabners.com. And you'll hear more about what they do from today's guest. I'm delighted to be interviewing Nik White, the Managing Partner of Brabners. Nik has been Managing Partner since 2018. He is a commercial lawyer by background. Nik has proudly devoted his entire working career to the firm, having joined as a trainee solicitor in 1995. Nik describes himself as an accidental lawyer. So, what are the skills, values, beliefs that have seen him rise to the role of managing partner? What things are Brabners doing differently that are getting people talking? And what is it like to deal with one of the most infamous cases in recent years, the infamous Wagatha Christie trial? I interviewed Nik at the Brabners offices in the centre of Manchester. He started by telling me about one of the unique aspects of his career.
And I have a very simple career story because I'm a one-firm person. I'm always slightly envious of or intrigued by lawyers who've had a number of firms on their CV. I have one. I joined as a trainee in 1995.
Wow, I wasn't born. In my dream.
I'm still here 28 years later. So I've been managing partner since 2018.
Wow.
By background, I'm a commercial lawyer.
Great.
I do relatively little client work these days, I must confess.
Great.
One slight drawback of a fairly full-on managing partner.
Managing partner. Yeah. Amazing. So I'm going to describe you as, for people who've watched the American series Suits, you're the Jessica of the firm.
What on earth does that mean? I've never seen Suits.
Well, no, she's the managing partner. Certainly in the, I know you've never seen it, but
I'm very happy to be a Jessica. Happy, Sally.
Yeah, Jessica's the managing partner who usually, dissimilar to you, wears sort of, designer suits, looks like she ought to be in the front cover of Vogue, and expensive handbags. You, on the other hand, and
I've let you down by
quite scruffy.
Sorry.
No, not quite what I was expecting on the Thursday of a managing partner. But joking aside, Nik, that career history is quite interesting because you're right. There isn't an awful lot of people who have been in just one firm and have succeeded to your height. But let's go back to the beginning. Why did you choose law and, I suppose, commercial law, which is your specialism, if you like, when you started in law?
Yeah, this might be an underwhelming answer, Sally. So why did I choose law? I am an accidental lawyer. I didn't know what degree to do. And it was my father who said, well, why don't you apply to do law, because that way you'll have to do well in your A-levels. So there was some logic to it.
Yes.
The irony is I relatively speaking, cocked up A-levels, so it didn't work, but I managed to scrape through through the clearing system.
Brilliant.
With about 3 days to go, and I did, it was about the time, this is the early 90s, when dual honours were becoming a new thing.
Yes.
And luckily for me, there was an undersubscribed course in law and economics at Leicester University. I didn't even know where Leicester was, but I happily turned up, did my law degree, which I enjoyed, law and economics. And then, if I'm honest, I sort of blindly just went through the process. I went to Chester Law College to do the LPC and applied for training contracts. I mean, I'm very happy with the choice I made, but I wouldn't describe myself as a lawyer who had this burning ambition to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I also think it's no coincidence I ended up being a commercial lawyer because, I don't have your fierce intellect, Sally. So I think
not on a Thursday.
No, commercial is one of those areas where I guess what I aspired to be for clients was that, I know it's a bit cliche now, but trusted advisor.
Yes.
What I loved doing, and I think I was okay at it, was really coming alongside clients and helping them negotiate and get deals done. It was, there's often when aspiring lawyers sort of ask, what is it you do? I think, actually, I'm not sure there's actually that much law in what I do. It's just,
yes,
it's being sort of commercially aware and savvy and knowing how to negotiate a good deal.
Yeah.
So, I think luckily for me, I found an area of law that didn't have that much law in it, and played to my limited strengths. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and perhaps just whilst we're talking about the law, I can just ask this question now. What's been the most kind of memorable case for you in your career? And that may be taking you back. And I ask it as well in this context, because people who perhaps have never heard of Brabners have now, after, Wagatha Christie case, and I'll come back to that in a moment, and, Brabners' brilliant role, and you've won lots of awards as a result. But can you remember what's been kind of a most memorable case for you?
Yes, it's not really a case, because I'm not a litigator.
Yeah.
I think just before I answer the questions, I think the most enjoyable work I've done, of which there have been many, so a lot of the work I used to do was acting for software game developers, so helping them negotiate development and publishing deals for computer software games.
Yeah.
So through the years, I'll have done, dozens with the sort of tech giants on the other side: Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, all the big publishers like EA, Activision, latterly Tencent,
wow,
the emerging Chinese tech company. So that's the work I've enjoyed most, because the nature of the work, the subject matter, and dare I say it, generally you'll find, software game developers are a fairly unconventional, fun bunch.
Yes.
Which is why I've turned up my jeans and t-shirts. Sorry to underwhelm you with lack of time.
I'm just stuck in, the bar, which is still a little bit high.
But probably the most memorable job, and this, as I said before, this has actually been quite thought-provoking for me. So I think the job that I worked on that I'm most proud of, and probably had the biggest impact, was, so one of our clients who we're really proud to represent is Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, which, as the name suggests, and is actually the world's oldest institution of its kind. So it's a teaching and research institution for tropical diseases. And I'm going back some way now, but between 2005 and 2007, I did a lot of work with them on two large projects that effectively were sort of connected. So they set up what's called IVCC, International Vector Control Consortium. So they lead, and it continues to this day, a consortium of international organizations, including US-based universities, which, sitting alongside that, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation entered into a partnership with the school to fund IVCC and the school.
Wow.
That relationship continues 18 years on. The Gates Foundation have funded to the tune of many hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's all about insect-borne diseases, predominantly malaria.
Yeah.
Looking for developing new pesticides, treatments. And I advised on all the contracts around the consortium, the grant, the funding agreements.
Wow.
Actually, this being asked this question by you has actually made me stop and think there must be something with a deeper sense of purpose than just computer software games. And I guess that's it. And there are real hidden gems. As I said, it's their 125th anniversary this year.
Wow.
Really, really special client that we're really proud to be associated with.
I mean, that's amazing, because I think sometimes in the grind of the job, we forget some of the good work, which is why I've asked you that question.
Yeah.
That actually, it is law with a purpose. It's really, really interesting, and I wouldn't have thought you were going to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, tell me, gosh, it's such an Aladdin's cave of information. What was Brabner's involvement in Wagatha Christie? So we're really name dropping here, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're going from Bill and Melinda
Yes,
to then, Colleen Rooney and that whole case in the High Court. Now, everything about that case is on public record. I'm not asking you to divulge any legal privilege. But what was Brabner's role in that? Because now we do know the Brabners were involved and everybody was hooked on that case.
Yeah, well, it came to us. It's quite a simple answer, really. So, Triple S, which is the agency which Paul Stratford heads up, which predominantly is a sports agency.
Yeah.
So they manage and always help manage Wayne Rooney's career, but also Colleen. And through that connection, we were introduced to Colleen when she needed help defending the libel claim that Rebecca Vardy brought. It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah.
So it did come through the sports route, but clearly Colleen isn't a sport client.
No.
And
it was a
I think blessing and a curse. Look, you've got to embrace it and try and have some, I guess, fun with it and enjoy the moment in the spotlight. And we've had a lot of attention. We generally don't. We try not to be a sort of showy, shouty type of firm, so we don't necessarily crave lots of PR and publicity. But on this one, we did sort of consciously think, which is why we did the podcast series afterwards.
Yeah.
You know what? If you can't enjoy your moment in the limelight on the back of something that is as interesting as this, has had this level of public attention, then when will you ever?
Yeah.
So hopefully, in our own, dare I say, slightly quirky way, without milking it too much, and certainly without taking ourselves too seriously, we've really enjoyed the profile and publicity we've had on the back of it, and it was an interesting case to be involved in, as I hope came across in the statements that came out after the verdict. Genuinely, both Arthur and Colleen and we would recognise it's a shame it went as far as it did.
Yeah.
It would have been in many ways far better had it not gone the sort of full distance and received all the public glare. But it is what it is.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah, I mean, it continues to fascinate it.
Every blessing and curses. It and look, it's fine. It's no problem. It sort of dominates the sort of image, it would seem, of the firm. There's been so much attention around it, and it's been a great case to be associated with. But there's lots of other.
Oh, of course there is. Well, obviously, every guest I have on here, I've researched them, and this firm, family law. There's a whole load of other areas that you do here. Also, commercial litigation. The areas that I'm really interested in, because I often like referring people here, is the charity work that you do, and the pro bono work. For a lot of charities who want to set up as charities, and then they need law firms, and see there's a massive pro bono unit doing that. So the whole vast of other areas beyond that. So it's quite interesting that that's all sort of forgotten about for a bit.
Well, but that's interesting you pick up on that, Sally, because that's really important to me and us. It's a relatively small part of the firm. The majority of the firm is sort of business B2B. It's corporate real estate. But actually, if I go back to when I joined in the mid-90s, our then senior partner, a guy called Lawrence Holden, who was a real sort of pioneer in the charity law world. And for example, that's how we ended up acting for the likes of Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, who is a charity. In terms of, preserving the legacy and maintaining perhaps some of the things that perhaps set us apart from many of the other commercial firms out there, doing work in the third sector, whether it be, charity, social enterprise. We have a large team within the real estate group that work for registered providers of social housing. And that's actually really important. It kind of goes beyond the revenue and profit it generates.
Yeah.
Just in terms of actually demonstrating perhaps there's a, dare I say, a slightly deeper sense of purpose. It's not just about being a sort of commercial law firm which is here to generate revenue and profit. There's a sort of deeper meaning,
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
Which then comes back to, maybe we'll touch upon it, it's no coincidence we're a B Corp and maybe some of the ways in which we perhaps distinguish ourselves. So, yeah, it's interesting you pick up on charity because it is relatively small. It's a relatively small team, but its importance to us perhaps outweighs its size, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, tell me a bit more about the firm, because I can tell you, I get a lot of messages, predominantly via LinkedIn, by aspiring lawyers who are first-class trainees and so on, who are like, I want to apply to Brabners. Or, I know, I'm like, why? They're just like,
The managing partner's a scruff.
He's always gruff.
Wear a shirt next time, Sally. Don't worry.
No, but I mean, joking aside, it's a great firm. And I just wondered if you can just tell me a bit about what kind of strategies are in place? What else are you doing here? And how do you carry yourself? Because, you've been here for a long time, but actually you've got an open eye to learning and keep evolving. I mean, for instance, when you became managing partner, you contacted all the other managing partners in Manchester to say, hey, I'm here. Be nice to meet up or whatever. I mean, I don't think many responded.
No, I don't know. It's almost all of them ignored me, but
they're probably like, what? We're competitors. You're not competitors. That's just collaboration.
And I've forged some lasting friendships from that group.
Fantastic.
So why did I do? Maybe it was a bit unconventional. I was very conscious that when I became managing partner, I was far less well known in Manchester. Home for me is South Liverpool. I joined the firm Brabner Holding as was in the mid-90s that was only in Liverpool and Preston. So it was only into the 2000s that we established a presence in Manchester. So maybe that's just me being I don't know, very open, direct, dare I say, trying to be friendly. And there was also an element of I guess recognising that, and I don't mind it, there are times when it's a bit of a lonely hearts club.
Of course it is. You're the big boss, managing partner.
So it's almost a case of building a new network outside the firm.
Yes.
And actually, yes, other firms on the face of it are rivals, but the reality is we're all in it together. We've got huge shared vested interests. There's space enough in the market for all of us. And I'm sort of, my instinct is never to descend into sort of rivalry. I think it's far better to embrace the competition and wherever possible, establish good relationships. I agree with you. I was only teasing you about that because it is unheard of, but there's no reason why not. And actually, it's good to keep being open about it. But I want to learn a bit more about Brabners, right? I'm in your very exciting offices in the centre of Manchester, and the views across the city are amazing. You can see Manchester Central, which hosts every conference that comes here. I mean, you're in the hub, and you've got offices throughout the northwest. You've expanded. The north now.
Oh,
Leeds.
Wow.
I can't say just northwest.
I'll take it back. Leveling up.
Yeah.
So what are the strategies? I've been on your website. I can see, you talk about where you want to go, your vision, your mission, all those things. But what do you want to see Brabners doing in terms of that space?
So what I hope comes across is I think our firm strikes a nice balance between, on the one hand, being of a size such that we can and do attract really good blue chip clients. We can and do attract great lawyers. But we're not just another corporate law firm. We don't aspire to be a large national corporate behemoth. I think, we talk a lot about our independence and our sense of independence and like doing things a bit differently. Some might say I'm slightly unconventional as a managing partner. Maybe that's no coincidence. Maybe I wouldn't be a managing partner at many other law firms. So I think there's space in the market and demand for a firm like us where we can demonstrate we have national reach, but we're anchored from offices in the north.
Yeah.
And from a sort of talent perspective, it's again striking a balance between, come here, we want people who are ambitious with drive, who'll get to do great work with alongside great lawyers. But bluntly, there's more to life. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We genuinely put true value on life balance.
Yeah.
So it's not a sweatshop. It's not. I wouldn't ever want to create the impression come to Brabners for an easy ride.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, we do. We like ambitious, driven people. But we're proud of our culture. We love being a bit different. Dare I say, there's some things that we do that might be a little bit quirky in left field. It's not a firm where there's any real sense of sort of hierarchy. There's no place for ego, sharp elbows.
Yeah.
It's a very unpolitical place, and there's a real family feel to it. I mean, when the managing partner when I joined, Michael Brabner, whose family name we carry with pride. I think he was fourth or fifth generation, and in many ways it does feel like a family business.
Yeah.
And I genuinely see my role as merely being, a custodian for what would be a relatively short space of time in the long history of the firm that's heritage goes back 200 plus years.
Yeah.
And that's, come to what sort of firm are we? I'm biased. It's all I've ever known. I think we've always been a great firm. We can point to lots of law firms rightly talk about culture, but I think we can back up with sort of awards and accolades enough to demonstrate, ours is real, it does exist, and we're very proud of it and precious of it.
Yeah.
But we also want to be a great firm, a great business, a profitable, sustainable business. But I think you can have it both ways. You don't have to sort of sell your soul, risky culture at the altar of trying to be a great, well-run business.
Which is great.
It's all about balance. Everything's come back to just maintaining balance.
Yes.
And again, as I said before, not taking yourselves too seriously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to come back to sustainability a bit later.
Yeah.
But whilst I remember now, I want to ask you some questions I always love asking, which is about your favourite book. Have you got a favourite book? Secondly, have you got a favourite fictional legal character? And I'll come back to my next question, which is all about well-being, because I know you've knackered your shoulder. So that might have to be rethought. But just firstly, those two. Have you got a favourite book and why? And have you got a favourite legal character?
So favourite book, I'll make a confession. Back to me not having your fierce intellect, Sally. So I'm not the most bookish people. Other than reading when I'm on holiday, my big challenge is I tend to read. I've always got a book on the go, but I tend to read late at night before going to sleep.
Yeah.
And I reckon I average about 2 pages now before nodding off. And usually the first page is rereading the second page of the night before. So I read at snail's pace. So perhaps it's no surprise that the answer to the question, and I have thought about this, and I've chosen it because it's the only book I've read more than once. I've read it 3 times, and it's very short and concise. And it's a book called, from about 8 years ago, Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. Now, Matt Haig,
he's a great author. I follow him.
Fiction author. This was his first non-fiction book, and it's fascinating. It's a sort of mix between a novel and a memoir. And it's essentially taking us through the journey of his mental breakdown and battle with depression. And it's a completely unconventional book. It's a mishmash of autobiographical content, thought dumps on, lists of different things, and it's unique. But I know it might sound really dark and heavy, but I have to say I think it's the most uplifting, life-affirming, positive book I've ever read. And I would recommend it to anyone. Because it is relatively short, concise. It's not a massive read.
Yes.
But it was a really thought-provoking, heartwarming book, which, given the nature of the subject matter, is saying something, I think.
Well, we'll probably come back to that on well-being. And what about, we know you don't watch the American series Suits, which of course starred Meghan Markle, so younger people. And I don't know if you've ever seen LA Law.
You're writing me off as not a younger person.
Well,
we talk about Ali McBeal and LA Law instead.
LA Law, which is...
What? Said I'm an accidental lawyer. I didn't grow up aspiring to be a lawyer.
Oh gosh, okay. Yeah. But have you got a favorite legal character? Like I would say Rumpole Bailey.
Yeah.
I have a long list, Atticus Finch.
Wow, that's the obvious one. I was thinking I can't go for a comic character which would have been Judge Dredd. That's not serious enough. There was the character that Tom Cruise played in A Few Good Men, if you remember. I think he was a military lawyer.
He was a naval.
And that brilliant scene with Jack Nicholson where I think Tom says, what's the line? I want the truth.
Yes.
To which Jack replies, you can't handle the truth. So maybe it's Tom Cruise's character. But I guess, joking aside, Atticus Finch, so Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, I think, is possibly the only book I read at school because I was required to read it that I particularly enjoyed.
Yeah. And
I think Catch-22 was okay, but it was a bit too quirky for me. But To Kill a Mockingbird, I can vividly remember reading as a schoolboy. And of course, the film adaptation from the, I'm guessing, early 60s with Gregory Peck.
Yeah.
But that's, I think that character's probably often held out as a sort of hero of American cinema.
Yeah,
and brilliant book, brilliant film. Gregory Peck, fantastic actor. But the character and the context, lawyer in Alabama, I think. Yeah. But yeah, someone I guess swimming against the tide, a white lawyer in that scenario, willing to, support social outcasts, victims of prejudice, in spite of it all. So it's probably not the most original answer. No, but actually, you answered it before.
I know. Sorry, I don't do that thing called. Oh, sorry. I didn't know. I never know what people are going to say. But A Few Good Men as a film is also good.
Yeah.
Nick, just well-being. I said I would ask you this question. I know you've hurt your shoulder. Being the managing partner is a big job, right? Yeah. My branch of the profession is a big job. Yours is a big job in terms of solicitors, and being leading a firm or an organization with multiple locations and offices and so on comes with it additional pressures to all our jobs. The law, I think it was Christina Blacklaw's on here when I asked her, said, the former president of Law Society said it's not really a job for the faint-hearted. I think that's got to be right. But the burnout rate is high and we need to look after our well-being. So 2 questions. 1, what do you do for your well-being? And 2, what would you like to do for your well-being?
Right.
In an ideal world, look, I think I've been surviving on coffee. I've been in court before I came here to interview you. I'd love to do more yoga. I'm running a marathon. I probably will die. It's a fun race for breast cancer.
That on WhatsApp, so I was a bit dark.
I know. I'm not going to die.
If you don't, I'll respond to you.
Well, breast cancer prevent will still get the money. But this is just about doing some extra stuff. But I think I probably, I like extreme challenges and that's it. So what do you do just to self-check in?
I think you're right. It's I genuinely love the role. I don't see it as a job. I genuinely see it as almost a vocation. It's an absolute privilege to be managing partner of this firm, it being a firm that means so much.
Yeah.
But I guess there are times when you could say it can be a fairly lonely role, because ultimately the book, I do take that responsibility seriously, and ultimately the book stops with me, or in my own mind it does.
Yeah.
And also maybe this goes back to just personality type. I just enjoy being the sponge that soaks up other people's challenges, and I pride myself on hopefully coming across as being very open and approachable, and maybe because of that, lots of people will come to me with their challenges, and I like that. And people do actually ask. They sort of offload their challenge onto me, and every so often someone will say something like, "So what's the equivalent for you? Where do you go?"
Yeah.
And I sort of smile and say, "Well, nowhere really. I'm the end of the line." And there are times when my sponge gets saturated.
Exactly.
I need to just go off to a dark corner and give it a little breathe. But no, joking aside, I surround myself with brilliant people, loads of amazing colleagues. I am very open, and I don't suffer in silence.
Yeah.
So I will talk through and share my challenges. On the one hand, I pride myself on being robust and resilient.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm very comfortable talking about what might be perceived as weaknesses or vulnerability. So I'm not here saying I've got all the answers, I'm bulletproof.
Yeah.
That's certainly not the case. And I think that helps.
Yeah.
So I do ask and demand a lot of myself, but I think I'm sufficiently self-aware that, if things are getting on top of me, I need to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I don't suffer in silence. Quite the opposite. I'm probably, if anything, erring on the side of being almost too open and talking too much, which might be a bit unnerving.
No,
again, it's just back to being comfortable, sharing vulnerabilities. For me, a lot does boil down to talking, being open. Problem shared is a problem halved and all that.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Now, if I was a young person aspiring to enter in my head, to come to the solicitor's profession, your branch, well, as a profession as a whole, I wondered if you had any advice for those entering the law. Because, we've been through COVID. You've had to manage that in your role as managing partner and so on. On the way here, I met a trainee who just qualified as a solicitor. So that, that's 2 years of one's life. So have you got perhaps 3 things you would say to someone, careers advice really, aspiring to enter the law now?
Only 3. Gosh.
Well, I'm limiting you. I've got other questions I want to ask you.
So I'd say be open-minded and curious. And I say that partly because I think, unlike, I'd say, my generation, I suspect I'm probably one of a dying breed, single firm person. And dare I say it, we're now into the era of the 100-year life. My kids are probably expected to live to 100. So not only would they, if they're going to be a lawyer, work at the same firm, they probably won't be just a lawyer for their career. They'll have multiple careers. So, be open-minded and curious, and always embrace opportunities to develop. And I guess following on from that one, this might seem a cliche, but it's so true. You do get out what you put in, and look beyond chargeable hours and fee income. Just look to develop and contribute more broadly. Whether it's client development opportunities, business development, engaging with committees, initiatives, non-chargeable stuff. I also say it's never too early to start building out your network. I still have close professional contacts who I first met and connected with when I was a trainee. So, just really jump in the deep end and embrace it. You'll get out what you put in. And then I would say, yes, be ambitious and be driven, but be a team player. Don't allow ego or arrogance to get in the way. You don't have to be liked to progress in your career, but you do have to be trusted.
Yes.
So be genuine, be sincere, be empathetic. And remember, it's cool to be kind.
Yeah.
And my 4th one, which I know you might edit out because I was only allowed 3, don't take yourself too seriously. This is I think it's it's a really rewarding profession and career, but it's not necessarily for the faint-hearted. So it's tough enough as it is. Any opportunities to seek out and embrace enjoyment, however and wherever you can, take it. You know, don't be a fun sponge or a mood hoover.
Yeah.
You know, savor those moments.
Yeah, I love those. I'm writing these down for me. I think I need to remember some of these.
You're definitely not a fun sponge.
Well, I am maybe in course,
Okay.
but there we are. No, that's really great. Nik, I wanted to ask you about some stuff. I've asked you a lot about the firm because it is a unique firm to an extent, and your career here has been unique. But I met one of your colleagues recently, an Irish fellow, when we were doing a round table about the future of the legal profession and in terms of real estate and the working scenario and how what that will look like, hybrid or not, will we need offices and so on. And he told me, as I was chairing this, it was a CBRE, which was a great round table with other lawyers from the Northwest, from different firms, about the bog and some of the things you've been doing on ESG, sustainability. And the main reason I'm asking you is actually our profession feels like it's a bit behind on sustainability. You know, even the NHS is talking about reducing, you know, certain meds on the basis of the carbon print and sustainability. But law firms are not quite talking about it fully in as much way, except for you.
No, it's not just except for us. I think the profession, this goes beyond just sustainability. I think, you know, diversity, much more broadly. Where we sort of started and how I describe the firm, you know, we have a clear sense of purpose, and you know, genuinely, we believe business can and should bring about positive change. Business isn't; it needn't be a dirty word. It can be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah.
And I think our profession, yes, maybe it has some catching up to do, but I think there's some real momentum now being built. And
because
I like to think it's for the right reasons, but being cynical for a second, you know, in terms of the challenge of, you know, the war for talent as it's described, it's that sort of generational societal change where I'll say the next generation, they expect more than perhaps my generation did.
Yeah.
So yes, you know, they want to do good work and get paid well, but that alone isn't enough for many now.
Absolutely.
So they want to feel like there's a deeper sense of purpose to the organisation that
they're working for. And they're asking you in your interviews, you know, what are you doing for environmental reasons, sustainability? So that's why I'm interested in how it came about, that because I think your special knowledge, if you're a mastermind, would be a peat bog, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, it's fascinating. So again, back to being a little bit different, and by no means knocking the many who do great work with funding tree planting, but we just thought, let's do something a bit quirky and different. So
let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, so the peatland, so it's the project you're referring to, which I'm glad you call it the bog, because at the time it's a peatland bog restoration project. And I can't remember who, but a colleague did say we should call it the Brabners Bog. And the very professional marketing advice at the time was that's just a bit too left field. But it kind of stuck as an internal badge. But I think they've accepted that everyone just knows it as the Brabners Bog. So the background is a quick bit of sort of facts for you. So interestingly, I might get these figures slightly out, but so peatland bogs cover about 3% of the planet's surface. But in the UK, it's about 12 or 13%.
Oh, right.
So the UK actually has a disproportionately large amount of peatland bogs. So what's the relevance to that? Peatland bogs store and capture twice the amount of carbon dioxide worldwide than all the world's forests put together and trees. So it might seem a bit dirty and unsexy, but actually it's a very effective way of storing carbon.
Yeah.
So the problem that we encountered and that we're playing a small part in helping to resolve is there's a farm, Kingsdale Head Farm in North Yorkshire, covers about a 1,500 acre site. that was previously Peatland Bog site.
Oh, right.
But through overgrazing, the bog was in poor health. It was ceasing to capture carbon. I'm simplifying things. I actually can't remember how we were introduced to the owners of the farm, but we were. And we thought, let's do something a bit different. And we committed a significant amount of funding.
Yeah.
Which both in and of itself was helpful, but critically enabled them, having secured private sector funding, to unlock a significant amount of public grant funding. And collectively, that funding is funding the restoration of the bog. So through a number of ways, and tree planting is part of it, but it's dealing with drainage issues and the like. And it's fascinating. So it's really captured the imagination internally. So we have volunteering days up there.
Right.
So the bog, a healthy peatland bog, it captures and stores carbon. It acts as a natural flood defence. It promotes biodiversity. It's ended up getting far more attention than we ever thought.
I know.
And maybe that's again just a bit different. Yeah, we're quite proud of it.
Well, at the round table, everybody was saying we'd like a bog, and actually enables you to be doing, leading with purpose. So it sounds really exciting. And then the other thing you've managed to do, we're in this kind of in between where there are people still working from home, and people who follow me know I've written several articles about 4-day weeks and efficiency and productivity. I sit on a productivity forum for the UK, and so on. And you've actually managed to be getting people in the office, and the building that you're in. And some of that has been done through a variety of ways, which leads me back to culture. Now, I know there's been some puppy days. I don't think there were Brabners farming puppies, but I think the landlord had some kind of puppy day.
Yeah. And
so the building has become a little bit more than just somewhere you go to work.
And that's really the answer. So if I go back to sort of pre-COVID, this was our way anyway. So we naturally manage with a very light touch, back to sort of culture and personality.
Yeah.
And I would say this, wouldn't I? But it's always been very much a sort of trust-based organisation where and I think one of the big silver linings to COVID has been, and for many they have no choice. There's a lot of organisations that have perhaps gone from a sort of hierarchical command and control, parent-child type relationship between leadership and management and colleagues, employees.
Yeah.
So then COVID blows up, and that's kind of blown out the water because everyone's scattered far and wide, and you have no choice but to trust your colleagues were logging on and doing good work from home. And I suspect, by and large, that trust has been, hard-earned and richly deserved. Many organisations in the professional services sector actually traded well through COVID.
Yeah.
But my view is, why on earth, if we are now sort of post-COVID, why would you revert to the old way of working? So I think that is a positive silver lining, and that then leads to flexibility and agile working being here for good, which again has to be a good thing in terms of accessibility. And look, we love seeing colleagues in person, but back to the nature of our firm, it would be a very un-Brabners thing to mandate people to return.
Yeah.
So we haven't, and we've broadly left teams to sort of decide for themselves. Different teams, different disciplines work in different ways, but it's not a sort of top-down mandate, one size fits all. And this is where offices come into it. So we're lucky in the sense that, maybe slightly counterintuitively, we, through and since COVID, have invested a lot in office space.
Yeah.
So we've opened a new office in Leeds last year. We moved our office that was previously in the centre of Preston to a new site that we now badge as Lancashire on the motorway network. That was in November 21. We moved into these offices in Barbaroli Square in Manchester in July 22. We're about to embark on a complete refurb of our Liverpool office. And I see it as our challenge to provide office space that's sufficiently compelling and attractive that colleagues would want to come in.
Yes.
And if you actually look at, you've been around these offices, the nature of the space is very much a sort of post-COVID design. So there's far less space set aside for fixed workspaces for colleagues. There's a lot more that's client-facing. There's a lot more that's catering for, regional flexible working people just to turn up, plonk themselves down, plug in and go. So so in that sense, we've been lucky. It was our choice to invest in property. Probably at the time, everyone was thinking, "Damn, we've got too much office space." So for me, I think the office is, in many ways, just as important as it ever was, but it just serves a different purpose now.
Yeah,
and it needs to cater for colleagues wanting to come to the office, not just to sit at a desk and churn out work, but to facilitate interaction. And that's where I know it might be seen as a bit frivolous, but puppy days, yoga, the social side.
Yes.
The vast majority of people completely understandably want to continue to reap the benefit of, avoiding the commute, however many days a week and working from home. And that's absolutely fine. But I also think the vast majority of people still crave human contact.
Absolutely.
So it's providing an environment where they can come in and enjoy that in the right way.
Yeah. No, I really.
No, it's a challenge, so it was our challenge to rise to, rather than a mandate that everyone has to come in X days a week.
Yes. Well, I think if I was employed somewhere, I would like to come in, certainly if there are puppies and there's yoga I can go to in my lunch hour. It's all really good. Nik, I've been asking you a lot here about the firm and what you do at the firm, and because you're in a leadership position, and really the sort of culture you'd like. But I wonder, when you're quite old and in a nursing home, and nobody knows
with my bad shoulder.
Your bad shoulder.
It's because you ought to be so hard.
Don't blame me. But I'm just reflecting. Somebody says, "Who are you again, Nik White? What did you do?" And I just wonder. You're 106, like the woman in front of Vogue this month, or whatever. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to sort of reflect long after you're not Mr. Brabner or Mr. White? Out of the firm. What do you want to be your lasting legacy at Brabners? Is it the culture of the firm? Is it the way you lead? Just reflecting on that for a moment, because we've all got ideas, haven't we? Yeah. And if it's more than just a balance sheet, and of course that's got to be a priority. There's a lot of staff here, and it's a business store, it's a business, I often say. But beyond that, what would you like your legacy to be?
That's a very deep question. I'm not really considering.
I know it's deep for this podcast, but I think you're the head honcho of a really interesting organization and an interesting business, and I just wonder.
Probably two answers: one the rest of the firm, and one to me. So the firm, and this then does come back to the nature of the firm. Thinking about Michael Brabner, his family, fundamentally the firm, when I stepped up, it was already a great firm.
Yes.
It wasn't in need of any reinvention. So it's trying to strike that balance between, dare I say, instilling fresh energy, ambition, drive, because on the one hand we are proud of our heritage, but for some it kind of weighs quite heavily around the neck, because you want to also project the image of being sort of progressive and forward-facing, which we certainly do, but we're certainly at the same time proud of our heritage. So it's sort of striking that balance between pushing the firm on, instilling that sense of ambition and raising profile, but at the same time preserving all the good stuff.
Yeah.
So I do very much see my role, as I said before, as just being the custodian of a great firm for what will be a relatively short period in its long history. Yeah. So it's being very careful to stay focused on the stuff that sets us apart and making sure we don't lose sight of that. I think the worst thing a firm like Brabners could do is grow to a point where it's become another, and it's lost the stuff that maybe does distinguish us from the competition.
Yeah.
So that's from a firm perspective. So I mean, I guess ultimately it's nothing particularly radical. Moving the firm on, leaving it in a better place.
Yeah.
But making sure we don't lose all the good stuff that was here already. And then from a personal point of view, I don't know. I mean, it's funny, you talk about leadership, leaders. As colleagues will know, I'm deeply uncomfortable with any sense of hierarchy. Words like boss, a band. People don't work for me; they work with me. I work alongside them. And it's not selflessness for the sake of trying to portray a certain image, but I've always seen myself as, okay, except I'm just the one that was thrust a little bit further into the limelight. But my approach is very much just first amongst equals. I don't see myself as anything different, anything better.
Yeah.
And actually, particularly for someone who came through the ranks, I had some interesting experiences shortly after I became managing partner, where sort of back to the Lonely Hearts Club.
Yeah.
A couple of occasions when I did suddenly feel I've kind of lost my group, my pals, because there's a lot of us who've come through the ranks together.
Yeah, and now you're. I know you don't like this term.
I walk in on conversations, and it would sort of go to me, it was sort of hush, and I'm like, now it's happened.
Yes.
And I work really hard. I do my best to just try and be I'm just a normal guy. But hopefully pretty humble, down to earth, approachable.
Well, you are, but the reality is, you are the boss. I know you don't like that term, but you are the big cheese. And so,
sadly, like that term, not boss.
You often say the big cheese.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some big cheeses I've had on here, like Lady Hale. I'd say
she's a big cheese. I'm just a Darien Triangle. I'm a pretty tall one. I've not answered your question, Sally.
Well, no, but
about me,
about you. What do you want?
In a nursing home, so for me, it's not really groundbreaking. So I would like to think people thought, he was all right. He was down to earth. It didn't go to his head. He cared, and was genuinely interested in nurturing and supporting colleagues, which is absolutely true. And I see it as part of my role is sort of trying to create an environment, set the tone for every colleague here at every level to feel empowered and encouraged to bring their best selves to work and contribute.
Yeah.
And I say this to all colleagues as they arrive. Every couple of months we have a meet the leader session, and that's one of the points I really hammer home, that you're not a small cog in a big wheel. Anyone and everyone should feel empowered to contribute. So I guess that sort of team player side of me, I would hope would be acknowledged.
Well,
there's certainly no aspiration of having been seen as the big cheese.
No, well, you say that, but I think it's a good point you made. But just very quickly, what do you think? I'm writing a book on leadership. What do you think makes a good leader? Who are the leaders that you've admired, particularly in law? Because in our job, there's no rule book. No one's giving, Nick, go on that training course about leadership or whatever. So what are the leadership skills that you've admired that you think makes a great leader?
Approachability, humility, and empathy.
And that was without hesitation in any shape.
Yeah, a lot of which ultimately leads to trust.
Yeah. Which is, I think, the number one requirement on for organisations of what employees want, actually.
Yeah, and I do think there has been a seismic change, and I think particularly for our profession. I remember back to the sort of mid-90s when I joined. Actually was a corporate lawyer for a couple of years after I qualified before I switched. Back then, corporate and commercial was sort of lumped in together, but we separated it out, and I was our fledgling commercial department back in the day. And I can remember it was very much still, dare I say, a sort of macho testosterone-fueled world where it felt like ego was still important, and there was a lot of brashness and arrogance that really didn't seem to serve any particularly useful purpose. And I think there's been a massive shift. Clients, I think the days of arrogant, bullish, shouty lawyers are largely gone. I think clients want to feel like they're represented by decent, relatable people.
Yeah.
So I think our profession has come on leaps and bounds, and I think the sort of old school, dare I say it, dictatorial, as I said before, command and control style leadership probably looks, if it still exists anyway, looks a bit dated.
Yeah. Interesting, because it hasn't entirely gone, has
No.
it? But I think perhaps here, these are some of the ways in which, your leadership style or the firm's culture is quite different.
Yeah.
By comparison to others. Nik, I want to ask you this about, you are the big cheese, but if somebody in their career, maybe there are so many different layers now in solicitors' firms. When I came to the bar, there was a solicitor, a partner, equity partner, nothing in between. Yeah. Now people send me messages constantly saying, so please I've become a junior associate. So please I've become a senior associate. Yeah. So please I've now become a part. I don't understand all the titles, but if they are in any of those roles and they aspire to be the big cheese, what advice have you got about career progression on the lead up, whether it's to partnership, to equity partnership, or even managing partner? If you've got any careers advice for men and women who might be thinking, oh, where am I going?
Well, specifically with the using your term, big cheese leadership roles, I'd say it came to me. I didn't go to it.
Yes,
and I think it's for others to identify that you may have potential for those roles. I don't think it works to sort of overtly aspire to and target a sort of managing partner role. I certainly didn't. It was more the other way around, and it was someone else sowing the seed with me and giving me some food for thought.
Yeah,
that I took some time to reflect on. I think just generally in terms of progression, a couple of points I'd make which are linked. If I think about perhaps where I've done a good job of making the most out of me and my attributes is being open about and comfortable with your weaknesses. A lot of people focus on strengths and try and paper over weaknesses, or what might be perceived as weaknesses. And I'll always say, relatively speaking, I've probably got far more weaknesses than strengths, but one of my strengths is I think I'm quite in tune with and comfortable and open about my weaknesses and how to address them. So in my case, if you look at how the firm has evolved in recent years with some of the senior hires and the management structure that we have in place, it's about surrounding yourself with great people who can perhaps do things that you can't or do it better.
Yeah.
But being comfortable acknowledging that I don't have all the answers. I'm not the single source of leadership, actually. It's all about the team.
Yes.
So I think being honest with yourself about weaknesses and how to address them and working on them is one. And then I'll often talk about, which a lot of people do now latterly, which is great, imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So I always say, I'm deeply skeptical of anyone who claims they don't have an imposter syndrome.
Me too.
I think that's one small step away from a wish of arrogance. So I'll always say, particularly to young aspiring lawyers, and dare I say it particularly, because I think it is still gender skewed to female lawyers, that just learn to love it if you can. At least embrace it, but don't let it hold you back.
Yeah.
See it for what it is, which is it's a sign that you are still humble. You haven't become arrogant, but just don't let it hold you back. And I'm more than comfortable confessing. I say this as I'm perilously close to turning 50. I'm male, obviously, if that's relevant. I'm a managing partner. I'm 25 years qualified.
Mm.
And it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still there. It always will be. And I actually kind of like it. When Michael Brabner, who I hold in the highest of regard, I was his last ever trainee. I think I finished him off when he did that, or he decided to go out and hide. I was the last trainee ever allowed to share his office. And even now, when I see Michael, I'm very close to him. I just can't speak highly enough of the guy. A proper man of real integrity, absolute gentleman. But if I see Michael, which I don't too often, but we will occasionally, there's always a little part of me that's that trainee.
Yes.
As a 23-year-old in the presence of the great Mr. Brabner. But I kind of like that, because that reminds me that, I've retained some humility and I've not become too arrogant. So, and I think there's a lot of lawyers who let either perceived weaknesses or imposter syndrome hold them back and sort of dull their aspirations and ambitions for themselves when they really need them.
Well, managing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
We had a whole conference on using it as a superpower. Well, it's good to know that you suffer from imposter syndrome as a high achieving man, as you described yourself. Just before we finish, and we could talk all day, but I know you've got a meeting. You haven't got to where you are alone. You've been very kind in naming your professional wonderful trainers, if you like, the equivalent of people masters and so on. But you've got a family, you've got a wife, and you've got other people in your life. What role have they played in keeping you grounded, especially at the big G's here? With
a huge amount. Absolutely. And I think family has been a critical source of remaining grounded. And dare I say it, without them, perhaps there could have been occasions of slipping into taking yourself or it just a bit too seriously.
Yeah.
So, particularly with teenage daughter and son, who are more than happy to bring me down a peg or two. That's not that I don't think I'm just thought that would take myself too seriously, but I'm surrounded by loving, supporting critics. So family's been important.
Absolutely. Well, Nik, it's been wonderful talking to you. I've seen that the firm and you have won endless awards, and I love it. You haven't? No, actually, I don't know why you haven't.
I've got my swimming badge. I'm not sure I've won any award.
I'll put a tweet out. Yeah. Well, I think it's important. You've been present at quite a lot of awards. You've been, Law Society awards and so on.
I'm happy to be a show pony. Sorry.
Yeah, well, but I just wondered what's next. You're at the pinnacle of your career here.
Yeah.
It's a big question, and sometimes I say, look, if there's something in the pipeline, don't disclose it.
Yeah.
I asked this question of a guest on this podcast, and he said, "Oh yes, there is a movie being made about me." And I said, well, "I'm not sure you should have said that." So I just wondered what's next.
I would definitely say there were few
well, if there was going to be one, who would play you? But what's next for Nik White, the managing partner Brabners.
Very unexciting answer. A lot more of the same, I hope.
Yeah.
They say never, but I will. I'll never work at another law firm. I remain as committed and as happy here as I ever have. So I'd like to continue for some time to come in a leadership role here. I do occasionally think, on my deathbed, if I look back and think,
gosh, you're not even 50 yet. No. We're talking about death.
Not only did I only have one career, but it was only at one firm. There are times when I think, I'm sort of comfortable with that. Not 100%. Maybe at some point, dare I say it, towards the end of my career, and once I've served my useful purpose here, maybe there's something else. It wouldn't be in a law firm there. A lot of maybe former law firm leaders progressing to non-exec roles. I don't know. To be honest, I try and live in the present as much as possible, not absolutely more ahead of myself.
Great.
You're going to ask me now who's going to play.
Who's is anyone tall enough? We have to go to America.
No, there are.
What?
You kindly told me you were going to ask me this question just before you press record, so I've actually spent the last half hour trying to think of tall actors.
And not listening to any of my questions.
No, I have. My answer's not that bad.
No,
so, who would play me? So I am tall, as you kind of...
Well, tell everybody how tall you are. Yeah.
I love the 1.5 feet high difference between us.
Thank you, Nick.
That's all right. So
without my heels today.
5.5.
Okay.
Plus no. But shrinking. So who played it? Well, I'll go with tall actors then. It would either be...
Yeah, and I said this.
I can't choose a tall actor because you'll think...
No. Well, I've had a kid on here.
Stephen Marchant, Ricky Gervais's sidekick, who's 6'7". If Peter Crouch went into acting, I reckon an overweight Peter Crouch, but without a good touch for a big man. I've done back-to-back with Peter Crouch. He's quite a bit taller than me.
Crikey!
Or the alternative, if I was going to take 20 years off myself, the actor, I actually don't know his name, who plays Cousin Greg in Succession. He's 6'7" too.
Oh, right. I'm going to have to look that up.
Stephen Marchant and Cousin Greg, they're all 6'7".
Okay.
I'm merely 6'5.5", so any of those three.
Well, Ian Simkin, now KC, who's a friend of mine, when I asked him this question, he said, well, it doesn't matter because in a lot of legal dramas, the actors don't look anything like the real people.
Yeah.
And Ian's about my height. So I think he said Colin Firth.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Right.
If you listen to that episode. So it's good. It's good to have Peter Crouch. Well, I wait for the film to be written.
In fairness, I'll do a good road full of time. Yeah.
Well, Nik White, thank you for talking law with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I really appreciate you giving up the time to reflect on your career here.
Dame Sally Penni, the pleasure has been mine.
Just Sally will do. There's no Dave.
No, my pleasure.
Thank you,
Nick.
Thank
you for listening.
Thank you to Nik White for telling me all about his career and life in law. And to Brabners for supporting this episode. Do visit brabners.com to learn more about their work, helping private, public and third sector organisations and private individuals achieve their goals. I'm delighted to announce 2 important dates for your diaries. The annual Empowering You Conference will be held on the 17th of November in Manchester at the offices of DLA Piper. Secondly, the Women in the Law UK annual dinner will be held on the 7th of March 2024 in Manchester with a very special guest speaker. To book tickets, do visit Women in the Law UK's website at womeninthelawuk.com. If you would like to support the Talking Law podcast, then please do get in touch. You can follow me on Twitter at SallyPenny1 and on Instagram, SJSallyPenny, and on LinkedIn, Sally Penny MBE. You can catch up on previous episodes of Talking Law. There are plenty for you to listen to, more than 76 episodes, with guests including barrister and celebrity quizzer from The Chase, Dr. Sean Wallace, activist Gina Miller, and former president of the Law Society, Christina Blacklaws, and so many more. Thank you so much to our production team at Purposeful Podcasts. I'm Sally Penni, MBE. Bye for now.